Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's study call. We're continuing our study in Your Invisible Power by Genevieve Behrend. We are currently in chapter 4, and so we're going to pick it up there. Yesterday, we talked a little bit about the idea of you being a creative center, and then we went into this idea of kind of trying to answer the question is if there's a benevolent God, if there's some kind of creative power out there, and it can create whatever that it wants, why create sickness? Why create misery? Why create um, these negative aspects? Why not just create everything positive? And so we're going over a few things to answer that question. The first thing that she brings out here is that since you are created and are a portion or a part of that wholeness, that God part, then you can create too. So if there is poverty in your life, if there's sickness, if there's weakness in any way, you are the one that's creating that. And so it is therefore your responsibility to correct that. So let's hop in here and continue on with answering that question. However, this does not mean that you should strenuously endeavor to compel the power to work out your picture on the special lines that you think it should. That method would soon exhaust you and hinder the fulfillment of your purpose. A wealthy relative need not necessarily die, or someone lose a fortune on the street to materialize the 10,000 that you are mentally picturing. One of the doormen in the building in which I live heard much of the mental picturing of desires from visitors passing out of my rooms. The average desire was for $500. He considered that $5 was more in his line and he began to visualize it, without the slightest idea of where or how he was to get it. My parrot flew out of the window and I telephoned to the man in the courtyard to get it for me. One caught it and it bit him on the finger. The doorman, who had gloves on and did not fear a similar hurt, took hold of it and brought it up to me. I gave him 5 $1 bills for the service. This sudden reward surprised him. He enthusiastically told me that he had been visualizing for just $5, merely from hearing that others visualized. He was delighted at the unexpected realization of his mental picture. So this is, I think, an important, excuse me, an important point to understand is that oftentimes, let's say that you're picturing something in your mind that you want to create. We often have a way that we think that it's going to come about, a way that we think that that's going to get created in our life. And now it may get created along those lines, or it may not. And that's what she's bringing out here is that it would be better for you to visualize what it is that you want and not impose upon spirit or substance or power or God, whatever it is, how that should be fulfilled. Because if you think that it should be fulfilled in one way, and let's say that that actually were to happen, maybe that would be to the detriment of somebody else. Like she's saying here, that somebody else lose a fortune on the street so that you can have the money that you want. You know, that's not to their benefit, but it would be to yours. And remember, we ended off the study yesterday with this idea that when you discover your purpose and you act in that purpose, it benefits everyone else around you because they are a part of God and you are part of God. And so you're really helping yourself. And so if for you to get ahead means that somebody else needs to lose, that doesn't benefit the whole. I mean, it's just an exchange of the same energy, but we want to create more energy. We want to create more than what there is. And so for you to get what it is that you're asking for, whatever it is that you're wanting, don't hold God or the spirit of this power to a specific fulfillment of how it should be, or ask it that it should come at somebody else's misfortune, but instead that it should come out of your own creation, that you're creating more than what there was there before. All that you have to do is make such a mental picture of your heart's desire, hold it cheerfully in place with your will, always conscious that the same infinite power which brought the universe into existence brought you into form for the purpose of enjoying itself in and through you. And since it is all life, love, light, power, peace, beauty, and joy, and it is the only creative power there is, the form it takes in and through you depends upon the direction given it by your thought indicator. In you, it is undifferentiated, waiting to take any direction given it as it passes through the instrument that it has made for the purpose of self-distribution. So what she's saying there, and we were kind of getting to this point in my last comment, that you don't want what you won't want to have and get what it is that you want at somebody else's detriment, but you want to have it at everybody's improvement. And so if you leave it up to God, if you leave it up to this power, if you leave it up to this creative force to create it in whatever way that it sees fit, it will create it in such a harmony that everybody involved will have an increase. And that's really what we're striving for. That's really what we want, for everyone to benefit. And so leave it up to this, because it is all life, love, light, power, peace, beauty, and joy. And that creative power will create it in such a way, in such a harmonious way, that'll be to everybody's benefit. And now, because the way that we think that things should be, it would be very hard for us to even comprehend everybody involved and how it would be to their benefit. It's better that you hold that image in your mind and see the end result and feel what it feels like if you were to have it. And then just, there's the saying, let go and let God. That's really what that phrase means, is that you hold in your mind, you send up that prayer, so to speak, of whatever it is that you want, and then you let God manifest it however he's going to manifest it. And if you remember when we talked about it before, sometimes it doesn't come in the form of the exact thing. That the story of the man, he pictured $5 and he got the $5. But he didn't just get the $5. There was an opportunity that came his way, which was to get the parrot. So he went and got the parrot, returned it to the lady, and then he got the $5. So the opportunity is going to show up for you to get the money, not the actual money itself. So $5 just didn't suddenly drop in his lap, but an opportunity for him to get the money. And the same thing will happen to you. So as you're visualizing whatever it is that you want, pay particular attention to everything that happens in your life from then on, because you never know the thing that happens, what's going to bring in the thing that you're desiring. And in the beginning, when you are learning this process, you may not know the thing that you should do. And so, you might try different things that come your way, and you might fail, because those might be creations of your past self, of something that you didn't want. And so how do you tell whether this opportunity, this thing coming to you, is, what you should be pursuing? In the beginning, you're not going to know, and you're going to have to go through trial and error. But as you go through trial and error, one thing will happen, is that you'll start to gain a sense, that you'll start to gain a familiarity with things that happen in your life. They have a certain spirit about them. And when that thing comes into your life, you'll recognize the spirit of it, and immediately you'll know what you need to do. You immediately know that that's where you should go. But in developing that attitude or that feeling or that sense of that spirit, you sometimes have to just try everything that comes your way. And some of them might end up as failures. But if you just continue to try everything that comes your way, one of those things is going to work, and you're going to get what it is that you want. And you just take note of the thing that worked, the spirit that accompanied that. And as you take note of the spirit that accompanies that, you'll build that sense. And then when the thing comes, when it shows up, you'll know it right off the bat. Now, I'll share with you something that an experience that I had, or a series of experiences that I had and developing kind of this sense, so to speak, and at least as far as a few things were concerned. And then it's what I began to base most of everything else upon, and I began to gain the senses for a lot of the things around me and as they came and whether I should take part in them or not. So when I was in high school, I started to let me take a step back in. So when I was in high school, um, I really loved movies and I loved books. I was a little bit of a loner. I like doing solitary things, and so movies, books, um, TV shows, some of those kinds of things really I found a lot of joy and a lot of happiness in doing them. And what I started to notice is that all of a sudden a certain book would start coming up over and over and over again in my life. And now this wasn't something that had just barely been published. It wasn't something new that had come out. I mean, this book had been out for, many, many years. As an example, the Lord of the Rings was something that happened. Now they were in the process of looking at making them into movies, and so that could have been a little bit of part of it. But it was even before that where the Lord of the Rings came up, because I tended to like things fantasy, especially high fantasy. Those kinds of books were things that I really enjoyed to read. And anyways, Lord of the Rings showed up multiple times from multiple sources, whether it was a friend or whether it was from a family member or whether it was even from a teacher at school. They would be mentioned. And it wasn't like they had this conversation with me specifically tell me you should go read this book. It was they would make mention of it in like passing sometimes, and I'd be like, oh, that's interesting. And so what I started to do is whenever these things started coming up multiple times, I was like, man, I should maybe go read that, or I should go watch that movie, or I should go watch that TV show. And I would go and do that. And what I would find is that I really loved those things. When I went and read The Lord of the Rings, it was like, I really love this. This is exactly the kind of thing that I like to read. And so I found this so fascinating that when things would show up multiple times, that if I started taking action on them and would go read the book or watch the movie or whatever, I found so much enjoyment out of those things. It's like, man, this is really interesting. And so I started to pay attention. So whenever something happened more than once, whether it was a book or a movie, TV show, some kind of piece of music would show up in my life more than once, like 2 or 3 times, I would immediately like, okay, I'm going to go check that out. And every single time that happened where it started to show up multiple times, it was something that I really enjoyed. And I found this fascinating. So I thought, I'm going to make this a rule in my life that when something shows up more than once, regardless of what it is, I'm going to go read that book. I'm going to watch that movie every time it's benefited me. And as I started to do this, I started to get a sense. I started to get a sense of these things that were showing up in my life. And then it got to the point where sometimes things showed up once in my life. It was mentioned once and sometimes even just in passing by a person. I was walking by and overheard a conversation from somebody else, and they would mention a book or they'd mention a movie. So it wasn't even I was having this conversation, but it was just in my area of awareness that these things were mentioned, and it would just have this spirit about it. It would have this feeling that would accompany it, and I'd be like, that's similar to these things that I've experienced before. I would go and watch that movie. I would read that book or whatever. And again, same experience. It would be something greatly for my benefit. And I continued to do this all throughout high school and into my 20s. And when I was in my 20s and I started studying things like what I'm sharing with you on these study calls and these things of kind of a metaphysical nature and personal and development, I started to wonder, can I apply this that I've just been using for media mostly, for things that I enjoy there, to apply to all of my life? And so I started to take notice of everything in my life that showed up more than once, regardless of what it was. And anytime something showed up more than once, regardless of what it was, I would go and do that thing. I would go and have that experience. I would go and read that book. I would go to that course. I would attend that seminar, whatever it was that showed up multiple times. I was taking advantage of, no matter what the cost was either, no matter whether I thought that it was right or not, or whether I felt like I was going to be judged by others or not. And every single time when I took advantage of those things that showed up multiple times, it was to my benefit. And again, I started to gain a sense in my life of these things. And so there are times when things still have to show up multiple times for me to take advantage of them. Because sometimes, even I have false beliefs and barriers that I'm still trying to overcome, that I'm still trying to work through. And so sometimes, I have these barriers up that prevent me from taking advantage of some of these things, or even thinking that they're worthwhile when they first show up in my life. But they'll show up again, and then I'm just like, okay, there's a reason that these things are showing up. Because remember, also, we talked about this in a I think a previous call, is that you don't experience the world as it is, but you experience the world as you are, because of your belief system, because of the way that our minds work and the way that we see the world around us. It's the only way that this can happen. If you want to know more about this, I have a video on YouTube called "How We Perceive the World." So if you want to go to my YouTube channel and watch that video, I go over this in a lot more depth, of this idea of how we perceive the world, and that we see the world not as it is, but as we are. And so it would make sense that if we see the world as we are, then things that show up multiple times are showing up because we're the ones that creating them. We're the ones that know that we need them. And so we're recreating them over and over again until we kind of get knocked upside the head and take the hint that, okay, I need to do something with this. And so if you're having a struggle with something and you're not sure whether you should do it or not, it's okay to say, hey, I'm going to wait on this. And if it shows up again, then I'm going to take advantage of it. And again, there may be still times where this is going to be a little bit of a trial and error before you catch the spirit of those things in your life, before you start to recognize those things that are there for your benefit. And so, pay attention, pay really good attention to the things that are showing up in your life, because those things are there. You're the one that's creating them. So they're there for a purpose, whether you're creating them out of a sense of misunderstanding and because of false beliefs, because that may be true, and then they would be something to your detriment, or you're creating them out of some desire for something good, and those would be for your benefit. It is this power which enables you to transfer your thoughts from one form to another. The power to change your mind is the individualized universal power taking the initiative, giving direction to the fluent substance contained in every thought. It is the simplest thing in the world to give this highly sensitive plastic substance any form you will through visualizing. Anyone can do it with a small expenditure of force. Once you really believe that your mind is a center through which the plastic substance of all there is in your world takes involuntary form, the only reason why your picture does not always materialize is because you have introduced something antagonistic to the fundamental principle. Very often, this destructive element is caused by the frequency with which you change your pictures. After many such changes, you decide that your original desire is what you want after all. Upon this conclusion, you begin to wonder why, being your first picture, it hasn't materialized. The plastic substance with which you are mentally dealing is more sensitive than the most sensitive photographer's film. If in taking a picture, you suddenly remember you had already taken a picture on that same plate, you would not expect a perfect result of either picture. Now, because of modern technology and stuff, when we have digital pictures now, this might seem a little bit foreign to some of you, but some of you that maybe a little bit older, know about film, that cameras used to use film, and even older cameras used to have plates that they would put in them, and then when the flash would go off, it would burn, so to speak, that image onto that plate, so that then you could see the picture that was coming about. And so you can imagine that if you were to have a plate, take a picture of it, and then you were to leave that same plate in there and take another picture, that both the first picture you took and the second picture you took, you're not going to see them. You're going to see a distortion of both of those pictures. And so what she's saying here is that in our mental picture, if you're mentally picturing one thing, it's like you're burning that image on this substance, that's this creative substance that flows through everything, and it starts to create that. And then if you flip your picture to something else, then it starts to create that. And there is a little bit of a time frame where there has to be this shift to where it has to go from one to the other. So if you're constantly going back and forth, then you're not creating anything. And so if you're frustrated because you're not creating anything, check and see, is it because I'm not holding on to a fixed picture? Because remember, the creative process that we've talked about is you have to have that fixed image in your mind that you're trying to create. You have to have a clear image of what it is. And if you're going back and forth, or the picture is even fuzzy, that can make it so it's difficult for your picture to be created. We don't have much here. I think we have just enough time to go over it. And so unless there's something really important here that we come across, we should finish this chapter here in the next few minutes before our time is up here on this call. So let's continue on. On the other hand, you may have taken two pictures on the same plate unconsciously. When the plate has been developed and the picture comes into physical view, you do not condemn the principle of photography, nor are you puzzled to understand why your picture has turned out so unsatisfactorily. You do not feel that it is impossible for you to obtain a good, clear picture of the subject in question. You know that you can do so by simply starting at the beginning, putting in a new plate, and determining to be more careful while taking your picture next time. These lines followed out, you are sure of a satisfactory result. If you will proceed in the same manner with your mental picture, do your part in a corresponding confident frame of mind, the result will be just as perfect. So she's kind of using a little bit of a metaphor here of this picture to illustrate this idea that we've been kind of hitting at of, if there is a benevolent God, why do bad things happen? And what she's saying here is that if you're holding a bad mental picture in your mind, you can't blame God for that. If what's showing up in your life, what you're creating, is not what you desire, you can't blame God for that, because it is you that's creating it. God is providing you with the creative substance. He's given you your agencies that you have the power to choose. Now, if God were to come in and create everything of benevolence, then in that instance, he would be removing your power of choice. And in my opinion, I would rather create something negative in my life, something that I need to overcome, something that I need to change the picture of, because I do have the power to change it, and still retain my agency, still attain the ability to choose, rather than God coming in and fixing everything for me. I would rather, because at that point, if God were to come in and fix everything, you'd be nothing more than a slave. But if you can create whatever it is that you want, and you take full responsibility for all of your creations, then you're no longer a slave, but you're actually the master of your environment. You're the master of everything around you. And so I wouldn't want God to come in and fix everything, because then I would, like I said, be a slave. I wouldn't be a master. And she's bringing out these ideas here. This is why you don't want, even if God is a benevolent God, you wouldn't want him taking away everything that may appear to be bad. And whether it's good or bad is a whole nother topic that we just don't have time for on this call either. So let's finish this here. The laws of visualizing are as infallible as the laws governing photography. In fact, photography is the outcome of visualizing. Again, your results in visualizing and your desires may be imperfect or delayed through the misuse of this power, owing to the thought that the fulfillment of your desire is contingent upon certain persons or conditions. The originating principle is not in any way dependent upon any person, place, or thing. It has no past and knows no future. So this substance that we're using to create, it is not a respecter of persons. It doesn't care your conditions. It doesn't care whether you're poor or rich. It doesn't matter whether you're a slave or master. It doesn't matter whatever your circumstances are. It's going to create picture that you hold in your mind, regardless of any other conditions. And so if you're in a certain condition that you don't like, it's not because the world is keeping you down. It's not because God hasn't provided you with whatever it is that you feel that you need. It's because you are lacking in your ability to create. And if anybody else is experiencing, that is the reason as well. And that might be a harsh truth for some people. And some people not probably, some people have gone through some devastating circumstances and some traumas. But those things were all created by somebody. And we need to take responsibility for everything that's in our life and create something better if we want something different. The law is that the originating creative principle of life is the universal here and everlasting now. It creates its own vehicles through which to operate. Therefore, past experience has no bearing upon your present picture. So do not try to obtain your desire through a channel that may not be natural for it, even though it may seem reasonable to you. Your feeling should be that the thing or the consciousness which you so much desire is normal and natural, a part of yourself, a form for your evolution. If you can do this, there's no power to prevent your enjoying the fulfillment of the picture you have in hand or any other. So there is an idea that I just want to end off here, which she kind of touched on here, but in a way, not really. It's that if you are a creative power, if you create everything that's in your life, and this universal substance is creating here and now, it doesn't create from the past. So anything that's happened in your past, it doesn't look at your past and say, oh, well, he created this before, so we can only create this in the future, or she did that, and so we're only going to create this, or this is the way that it's always been, so we're going to always create it this. No, as I mentioned before, this originating substance, it creates according to the benefit of everybody involved, even if it has to create a new way for whatever it is that you're trying to get to come about. And it does. We see technology and different kinds of advancements all the time. That's because this originating substance is trying to create for somebody, or maybe many somebody's, things, but there was not previously a vehicle for which to obtain that. And so it's creating the vehicles through other people so that then these things can come about. Now, the idea is that if you can understand that, then you never need to go out searching for anything. You never need to go out and find something. That you never need to feel like anybody is holding you back, because everything that you want will come to you. The opportunities will come to you. The people will come to you. The knowledge will come to you. And in fact, if you want to understand this principle of here and now, it's inside of you, or right now. That right now inside of you is everything that you need for the fulfillment of your desires. You just need to hold the picture of what it is that you want in your mind, act as if it's already created for you, that it's already yours, and then that thing will naturally be created in your outer world, because you first have to create it in your mind. That's one level of creation. And then it will take its shape in the physical world, and that's the second level of creation. So with that in mind, take some peace, some thought that you don't need to be in a rush. You don't need to hurry. You don't need to go out and get anything, because everything to fulfill the picture that you're holding in your mind of your desire will show up for you. It will make itself known to you, and then you just have to take advantage of that opportunity as it shows up. So with that, we'll end our study call for today, and we'll start off with chapter 5 tomorrow. So until tomorrow, bye for now.